Hello students, today we will see the next chapter is requirement modeling. The requirement modeling in software engineering is very essential. The planning stage of the software applications or system. The requirements can be obvious or hidden, known or unknown, expected or unexpected from the client points of view. The software engineering requirements are descriptions of the features and functionalities of the target system, and requirements convey the expectations of users from a software product or any website, any product. Then requirement modeling uses the combination of text and diagrammatical forms to depict the requirements in a way that is relatively easy to understand and more important and straightforward to review for the correctness, completeness, and consistency. Generally, the process of requirement modeling will begin when a business or an entity approach of the software development team to create some applications or some system from the scratch or update an existing ones. Then here requirement modeling having these are the points: introduction to UML, structural modeling, use case model, class model, then behavior modeling, sequence model, activity model, and communication or collaboration model. And fourth is architecture modeling, component model, artifact model, and deployment model. Then the software requirements are a description of the features and functionalities of the target system. Requirements convey the expectations of users from the software product, and requirements model also called the analysis model represent the customer requirements by depicting software in three different domains. First is information domain, then functional domain, and then last is behavioral domain. The term modeling implies all these stages typically result in producing diagrams that visually convey the concept that identify, and the most common method for creating these diagrams is UML, unified modeling language. Then introduction to UML. The UML stands for unified modeling language, and UML is general purpose modeling language which is designed to provide a standard way to visualize the design of the system. Some history of UML. UML was created and developed by Grady Bush and Uhor Jacobson and James Runberg, and in 1997 it is adopted as standard by the Object Management Group (OMG), and UML is a language for visualizing, specifying, constructing, documenting the artifacts of the software intensive system. The vocabulary and rules of the language, such as UML tells you how to create and read well formed models, but they don't tell you what models you should create and when you should create them. That's the role of software development process. Here the UML is more than just a bunch of the graphical symbols. Rather than behind each symbol in the UML notation is well defined semantics, and in this manner one developer can write a model in the UML, and another developer or even another tools can interpret the model unambiguously. Here UML is general purpose modeling language, and the main aim of UML is to define a standard way to visualize the way a system has been designed, and it is quite similar to a blueprint used in the other field of engineering. Actually, UML is not programming language; it is rather a visual language, and we use the UML diagram to portray the behavior and structure of the system. And also, UML helps software engineering, businessmen, and some system architectures with modeling, designing, and analysis. Then conceptual model of UML. To understand the conceptual model of UML, first we need to clarify what is the conceptual model and why conceptual model is at all required. A conceptual model can be defined as a model which is made up of concepts and their relationships. A conceptual model is the first step before drawing a UML diagram, and it helps to understand entities in the real world and how they interact with each others. To understand UML, you need to form consequence mode of the languages, and this requires learning three major elements. First is UML basic building blocks. Second is the rules of dictate how those building blocks may be put together, and some common mechanism that apply throughout the UML. Then first is building block of UML. The vocabulary of the UML encompasses three kinds of the building block. First is things, second is relationship, and third is diagram. Things are the abstractions that the first are citizen, first class citizen in model. Then second is relationship, tie these things together. And third is diagram, it groups the interesting collection of the things. Then we will see the first building block is things in UML. Things are the basic elements in a model in object oriented. In UML there are four kinds of the things. First is structural things, second is behavioral things, third is grouping things, and last is annotational things. Here first is structural things. It contains class, interface, collaboration, use case, active class, components, and node. Then second is behavior. It contains interaction and state machine. Third is grouping. It contains only one package. And last is annotational things or nodes, and it contains nodes. First is structural things. There are the four kinds of things. First type is structural things. Structural things represent conceptual or physical elements. These things are nouns of UML models, and structures things are the static part of model. Some structural things are listed one by one. First is class. A class is a description of set of objects that shares the same attributes, operations, relationship, and semantics. A class implements one or more interface. Here see the symbol for class. For example, window is the class name, then origin and size is the attributes, and some functions or operations apply on this class is some open, close, move, display, etc. Graphically, a class is represented with rectangle, and the rectangle includes name, attribute, and operation or functions as shown in this figure. Then second is interface. An interface is a collection of operation that specifies a service of the class or component, and interface therefore describe the externally visible behaviors of that element. A interface might represent the complex behavior of class or component or only part of their behaviors. Here for example, myClass.h, myClass.cpp, and here one of the circle and then rectangle. This is the symbol for interface. Then collaboration. Collaboration define an interactions and is a society of roles and other elements that work together to provide some cooperative behaviors that's bigger than the sum of all the elements, and collaboration has a structural as well as behavioral dimension. A given class of objects might participate in the several collaboration. Here one of the example vehicle movement. The graphical collaborations are rendered as a ellipse with a dash line and sometimes includes only its name as shown in this figure. Then a use case. A use case is a description of sequence of actions that a system performs that yields observable results of value to a particular actors. A use case is used to structures that behavior things in the model. A use case is realized by the collaboration. Here one of the example for actor, and second is use case placeholder. The graphically a use case is rendered as an ellipse with solid line and usually including only its name as shown in this figure. Then active class. An active class is the class whose objects own one or more processes or threads and therefore can initialize control activity. An active class just like a class except that its object represent elements whose behavior is concurrent with other element, and graphically it is represented as a class only along with a dark line as shown in this figure. Here one of the class event manager, it having also three types: class name, attributes and functions. Then component, a component is a modular part of the system design that hides its implementations behind a set of external interfaces. Within a system, components sharing same interfaces can substitute while preserving the same logical behavior. Implementations of the components can be expressed by wiring together parts and connectors. That parts can be include smaller components. For example, order form dot Java. Graphically, a component is shown at the upper right corner as shown in this figure. Then last one is artifacts. The artifacts represent physical things, where the previous five things represent conceptual or logical things. Artifacts is a physical and a replaceable part of the system that contains physical information, as shown in this figure. Here artifacts Windows DLL. Then nodes, a physical node is a physical elements that exist runtime and represent computational resources, generally having at least some memory, often processing capability. And here graphically a node is a cube and usually including only its name, for example server. Then second is behavioral things. Behavioral things are the dynamic part of a UML model, and these are the verbs of the model and representing behavior over time and space. In all, there are three kinds of behavioral things as shown in below. Then first is message. First, an interactions is a behavior that comprises a set of messages exchanged among a set of objects of roles with a particular context and accomplishes a specific purpose. An interaction is defined as behavior that consists of a group of messages exchanged among elements to accomplish a specific task. And here the symbol of message, just one of the arrow. Directed line, graphically a message is rendered as directed line, almost always including the name of its operations. Here message display any. Then state machine or state, it is a behavioral that specifies a sequence of the state objects or interaction goes through during its lifeline in response its events together its response to the events. And state machine is useful when the state of an object in its life cycle is important, and it defines the sequence of states as a object goes through in response to event, and events are external factors responsible for the state change. And graphically a state is rendered as a rounded rectangle, shown is this figure. Here state. Then third is activity. It is behavior that specifies the sequence of steps a computational process performs in an interactions. The focus is on the set of objects that interact. In a state machines, the focus is often life cycle of one of object at run at the time. And in an activity, the focus is on flows among steps without regards to which objects perform each step. And a step of an activity is called as the action. Graphically, an action is rendered as a rounded rectangle with the name of indicating its purpose, and states and actions are distinguished by their different contexts. And here the example is process order, and this symbol is used for activity. Then third type is grouping things. Grouping things are an organizational part of UML models, and these are the boxes into which a model can be decomposed. There is one primary kind of grouping things, namely only one package. Then package, a general purpose mechanism for organizing elements into groups, and graphically a package is rendered as a tab folder. This is called as tab folder. And usually includes only its name, sometimes its contents also. Here the example, and this is the symbol for package, for example business rule. Then last is annotational things. Annotational things are the explanatory part of UML models. There is one primary kinds of annotational things called as a note. And note is a simply a symbol for rendering constraints and comments attached to an elements or a collections of the element, and graphically a note is rendered as a rectangle with a dog ear corner. This uh, as a rectangle and together with textual or graphical comments. For example, comments, written copy to self, etc.